Welcome everybody. Happy Friday. It is October. Can you believe it? It is October already. It's crazy. So I just want to start off by saying today is about building credit, which can in turn build wealth. So if you are a first-time buyer, or if you're an investor, or maybe you're moving up in your home, all of these types of scenarios can be improved or helped if you have better credit. So before we get straight into it, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. I go by Ian of Austin everywhere on the internet. Down to you, Liberty.
Hello, I am Liberty Walker with Realty Austin, and I hope you guys are at home watching this podcast and you're not at ACL, although that would be fun too. But I'm excited to talk about credit. It's so important, and it's still a mystery in my mind. A lot of things. I have so many questions for you, Lauren. So I can't wait to hear from you. And what about this guy right over here? You want to introduce yourself?
JJ Tolentino at the Next Level Property Group at KW Realty. I'm excited about this topic. You know, we're realtors, and we typically work with qualified people. That's our job, to work with qualified people. So I'm glad Lauren's here because she could talk to you more about savings plans, credit, all that stuff. And yeah, I'm excited to jump into it. Now's a good time to plan. It's the first day of the fourth quarter. So you can get 2022 together.
True.
Absolutely. Lauren, why don't you give us your 30-second elevator pitch before we go into the topic today?
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. My name is Lauren Bringle. I'm an accredited financial counselor with Self Financial. We are a company that empowers people to build their credit and their savings so they can build towards their dreams of things like buying a house. So that's kind of us in a nutshell. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic because, as I'm sure you guys have seen, buying a home is a challenge for a lot of people, especially if you don't have credit.
So one of the things that we had talked about before we hopped on the live today is it is a very high volume search in Google, how to buy a home with no credit and no money down. And I'm thinking to myself, so what do you have if you want to borrow $500,000 in Austin? Like, so you don't have credit and you don't want to bring any money to the table. One of those, if you do have credit, you can still make something happen. The money to the table, that's a whole other conversation. We'll save that for another time. So why don't we start with some of the early questions? Or Lauren, why don't you tell us why it's so important that you have a decent credit score?
Yeah, so, like you said, if you don't have credit, it can be really hard to get approved for financing to buy a home. And also, if you have bad credit, you may get charged, even if you can get approved, you may get charged a lot of money over time. So I did write down a few examples to share with you guys just to illustrate how much more buying a house with bad credit could cost. So let's break this down, right?
Yeah.
If you have, for a first-time home buyer loan, if you have a 500 to a 580 credit score, you may, if you qualify, you have to pay a 10% down payment. If your credit score is above 580, that drops to 3.5%. So what does that look like for, say, a home in Austin that's maybe around $374,000? Well, if you have that lower credit score, that's $37,000 you have to pay right up front. But if you only have to pay that 3.5%, it's $13,000. So right off the bat, having better credit could mean you put $24,000 less down. What would you do if you had $24,000 more in your pocket, or if you had $24,000 less you had to wait to save for a down payment?
Well, and so the reason why that resonates is, let's talk about, so Liberty or JJ, how many clients of yours say, what's my interest rate look like?
I mean, I'll definitely direct them towards the lender on that one, Ian, but I don't really get that question too often. What is my interest rate going to look like?
Really?
Yeah,
How about you, JJ?
I mean, I get it all the time, but I deflect it because there's so much that we don't do. We like I said earlier, you have to have all your ducks in a row. Like, we would love to spend time with everybody, but with the market moving so fast, we take a good qualification letter from the lender and we're off. We're working. So, that's an equation you typically come to the table with, and we direct you to people like Lauren and companies like that. So yeah. I have an idea, but there's specialists for that.
I am going to say that we have to disclose, we are not mortgage professionals. We are not the three of us are not financial advisors, but it is important that we kind of keep a gauge on what's going on in the industry. And even as buyers and investors ourselves, it's important that we take a look at what are we getting on interest rates for both our primary properties and our investment properties, right? So that does hit our lives just like it hits everyone else. And the only difference is we see it a lot, right? And I get that question, especially with investors. They're like, oh, what kind of interest rate are you seeing if I'm putting 20% down? And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's around this, but check with your lender.
Yeah.
I'll still say
something. Yeah.
So that's a great point because interest rates vary day by day,
Mm-hmm.
but they also largely depend on your credit score. So, I can give a couple examples, though, to your point, your individual situation would vary based on your lender and your unique credit profile. But, taking that $374,000 house example again, right? So say you have a 620 to a 639 credit score. The last time I checked, there's a FICO loan savings calculator. It's a great tool if you want to kind of gauge roughly what your interest rate may look like. But you would pay over the life of a 30-year loan with that 620 to 639 credit score about $282,000 in interest over 30 years. That's on top of the price of the home, okay? If your credit score increases to 760 or above, that could drop the interest you pay down to $164,000. So the difference between those two score ranges could save you as much as $100,000 in interest over 30 years. So that's like, a 1 to 2% difference in interest when you're just looking at that, say, 5% interest rate or whatever, may not sound like much, but you add that up over time and it's a huge difference.
Well, Liberty, how easy is it to get a house for $375,000 in Austin?
When you did say that, Lauren, my little realtor heart did break a bit because right now we're not seeing that. We are not seeing that price. Maybe potentially in a condo or an apartment style condo, you could see 375, but for the majority of move-in ready homes, if you're going to be within 15 minutes of downtown, you're looking at 480 probably as the most least expensive for a 3.2 these days.
Yeah. So you see that example magnifies. The bigger the price gets, the bigger the difference in interest in down payment it's going to make.
So Lauren, let me ask you this too, before we get too far down the rabbit hole. You did mention in the beginning that there is a loan product out there where you can put 3.5% down payment. Is that still going to be considered a conventional loan? Or are we talking more like FHA?
That's an FHA loan. So that's that kind of what a lot of people call a first-time home buyer's loan.
Okay, so another thing that I wanted to kind of bring up is the reason why Lauren is here and it's so exciting is I fairly recently discovered this tool. A lot of times you'll have credit counselors that'll say, oh yeah, you've got to sign up with us and spend $100 a month, and to each his own, right? Like if that works for them, great. Or a lender will say, you do this and do this and do that. And it takes time to build that up. But the company that Lauren works for is actually unique in that they have a really clean app where it's you're able to be self-sufficient and build your own credit for yourself. And so, Lauren, can you talk a little bit about that? And I've posted this link in the chat and I'll share it again.
Yeah, definitely. So Self is definitely a great tool if you are just getting started with credit, or say you've had some financial mishaps in the past. And you need a tool to work on rebuilding your credit. And as I always say, it's in the name. You have to do the work yourself. You have to make your payments on time, but we can help you kind of build those positive credit habits that can serve you all the way from just starting out with your credit to getting your first, car loan, home loan, whatever the case may be, or even just qualifying potentially for a loan that has a lower interest rate. So yeah, it's an app. It's available on your phone in all 50 states in the US. You can download it from the iOS store or Google It'll walk you through the process. You basically are building a savings habit as you pay into this account with Self each month. And each month we're reporting your payments to all 3 of the major credit bureaus. So that'll help you, build your credit report, build that on-time payment history. If you make your payments on time, that's the part I always emphasize. You have to make your payments on time. And then at the end, you've potentially built a little bit of a savings that you could use to put towards something else. We also have a secured credit card tool if you want to apply your savings as a security deposit for that. So it's kind of this step-by-step process for building your credit, which to your point, Ian, it does take time. If anyone's kind of guaranteeing you an overnight fix to your credit, I would be very skeptical personally, because what lenders want to see and what mortgage lenders want to see is that you can pay what you owe back over time. They want to see that if they're giving you that 30-year mortgage, you will consistently make your payments throughout the lifespan of that mortgage.
I hear so many people that they're talking to the lender for the first time. They've been looking at all these houses on Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com, and now they're like, well, what do you mean I have to have some proof that I can pay things back? Like, what do you like that actually happens? What do you mean I have to prove my employment history? This is an easy method to get proof. And it's reported to the major credit bureaus. So unlike your phone bill, right, that only gets reported if you miss, right? This is reported. It's a loan that you're paying to yourself, and it builds your credit. So even if you don't have any credit issues, or you have pretty good credit and you want to improve it, it still applies. It still applies. If you want to go to that next tier, if you're an investor and you want to go to that next tier, but you don't, and you can just pay a loan back to yourself, and now it's a line of credit where you're keeping the balance low, you're paying it back to yourself, and it's money in the bank essentially. Other thoughts?
Yeah.
Liberty,
so
JJ.
There's 2 things I'm hearing here. There's one, a credit score is like a baseline. Warp data. Can she speak on clearing Rana's information on the credit score? Yeah, I actually had a question in regards to that. So the 2 things I hear is, like, what's a good baseline for credit score? Like, in my head, without being a lender or credit person, I just choose like 680. Like, if you're above 680, let's work. Maybe under 680, you're still figuring stuff out, but let me know how you want to move forward. And then I also want to hear the savings strategies, because we're talking about credit and down payment. Like, those are the 2 that you go to the lender with, and you're like, okay, that's not going to make that happen. So is there a credit score that you kind of feel, or it's all situational? What does that look like for you?
So it can depend on the lender, but typically what you see, people start to see the best rates and loan terms at about a 750 or above. And that's kind of the average credit score across the couple of credit bureaus, right? So while 680, you could, to your point, qualify for a home, you're still probably going to be paying a little bit more in interest than someone who has a 750 or up.
Right.
Another point I want to mention, just to correlate with what Lauren was saying, is, so if, let's say it was 750, as soon as someone checks your credit, it actually drops, right? And so really you want to go 10 points higher than that.
Well, and there is a shopping period that the credit bureaus allow you to have when you are looking for a home. So, you want to kind of take a few quotes from a few different lenders within a short time period, if you will. You have that option, and it'll only count as kind of one, what we call a hard inquiry, that will drop your credit score. But that's also a great point about why, if you are trying to buy a home, you don't want to be applying for all different types of other credit in the couple months right before you are trying to buy a home. That may signal to lenders, if suddenly you're trying to get a new car loan and open 5 different credit cards and all this stuff, lenders may take that as a sign that you're strapped for cash, that maybe you're struggling. They view it as a high risk move. So it's very important to be very mindful about your credit, especially within the 6 months to a year before you're planning to buy a house.
Liberty, what's the lowest credit score you've seen?
I mean, are you guys diving into your clients' finances? Because people don't show me their credit score. I just get it. I talk to the lender. I'm like, hey, Mr. Lender, are we good? They say yes.
What are you seeing, JJ?
Okay. before then, we have meetings before, but
I mean, I might hear a verbal 5 and kind of. I feel like some people know whether to talk to realtors or not. Some people don't.
Yeah, I've had it on both sides. I've had people that won't tell me a thing, which they don't have to, right? But I've also had people that come pouring their heart out to me, and I'll listen. And obviously, it's all confidential, so no names, of course. But I do hear that. I'm like, I think my credit score is like a 420. You think you can make that happen? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Did
I
you
haven't
just
seen a
pull that
1
number out?
Mark is asking
I
about.
know.
I mean,
So-
honestly, guys, I had no idea what my credit score was. So I went ahead and went to Credit Karma and looked at my Wells Fargo FICO score app. And I was very surprised that it wasn't so bad as I thought. But there was like a weird medical charge on there that I was able to find, locate, and get rid of. And now my score is higher. So it's good to know. Knowledge is power.
I want to start pulling through some of these questions too, right? So I think you had started touching on this, Lauren. Each pre-qual letter impact your score. And this goes for you too, JJ and Liberty.
So anytime you actively apply for a new line of credit or a new mortgage, then a lender is going to do what's called a hard credit pull or a hard credit inquiry. And that's what's going to drop your credit score. So if you're just checking your credit score, like you said, on, Credit Karma or something like that, just for your own purposes, or pulling your own credit report, that's not going to impact your score. It's only if you're actually applying for a new credit product, say credit card, car loan, something like that. That's what's going to trigger the lender to pull the credit report on your behalf, review it, and determine if you qualify or not. And whenever they're making that decision, that's what counts as a hard inquiry and can knock a few points off your score. But typically it's not too hard of a score hit, especially if you're only applying for one at a time.
John has a question. If the score is higher, like in the 820s, does it affect it less noticeably?
So that's such a nuanced question because it just really kind of depends on what you have going on your credit. Typically what I've seen is about, no matter where you stand, about 5 to 10 points per inquiry. But those inquiries will fall off your credit in about 1 to 2 years.
So with 820, and I just want to kind of rope this into if you were getting a loan. So let's say you were getting a loan and you want to make sure you have the best interest rate. From what I understand earlier, Lauren, is that once you're at about 750, you can't really get better. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the lender. Each lender has their own specific kind of requirements, but that's kind of where you start to see the cliff of the best interest rates start to happen at about 750 or above. So, the highest credit score you can achieve is 850, but you don't necessarily need to hit that perfect score to be able to qualify for the best rates.
Got it. And then why don't we talk about Warp Data? He says, can you speak on clearing errors or erroneous information off of the credit report?
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons I always tell people, if you're planning to buy a house, pull your credit reports. There are 3 different major bureaus, so try to pull all 3 about 6 months before you want to buy a house, 6 months or more, because if you do spot errors, if you do spot incorrect accounts or anything, and you need to work with the credit bureaus or the lenders to get those incorrect accounts removed from your credit reports, it can take time. So you want to give yourself that time to review, to dispute the information if you need to. And another call out that's kind of important to keep in mind is you can only have incorrect information removed from your credit reports. So you can't information removed just because you don't like it or something like that, so that's an important call out as well.
That's so funny.
Okay. So let's assume you get your credit where it's at, your 690, and then the lender says you have to put 10% down. What's any more strategies? Are those more lending questions on the down payment part?
On saving for the down payment. Yeah, I definitely need tips on this for myself.
Yeah, so I say that there are 2 ways that you can save more money, right? You can either grow your income or cut your expenses. And those are kind of the main ways, right? So growing your income.
I don't want to hear either one of those. Give me a third.
Yeah, and if you can do a combination of the both, if you can do a combination, even better, right? So ask for a raise at work, work extra hours, work a side hustle, you know, you can sell stuff you don't need. I saw one girl who was a college student who lost her job, for example. She started flipping furniture. So she'd find furniture at yard sales, refinish it and sell it for double, triple, whatever she paid for it, you know, on Etsy or someplace like that. There's different things you can do. You can meal prep, you can make your food at home, have your groceries delivered if you have a tendency like I do to go to the store when you're hungry and impulse buy. You know, having those groceries delivered kind of forces you to plan ahead. Another thing I would say that can be really powerful is just automating your savings habit. So we've seen a lot of our customers at Self, for example, have success building that savings habit just because they open a Self account, they turn on auto pay, and then you don't have to think about it anymore, right? Because that payment pulls each month. So, you know, say you're open a savings account, have the minute your paycheck gets direct deposited to your account, have that automatic deposit to your savings account set up, you know? So a lot of people have this mentality of I'll save what's left after I spend money each month, but I would challenge you to flip that. Can you save first and then spend what's left?
So I want to talk about that. We're kind of, you know, we've got a few minutes left. And so it's not free, but it feels free. Can you just explain like how the cost works for people? For this
so at Self, we do charge a little bit of interest since we do report the product as a loan. You know, there may be some fees, but typically those extra fees only apply if you know, get a late fee or something like that. So again, that's why I stress the importance of making your payments on time, you know, which is the number one, you know, it's a major factor in your credit score anyways. So that's a really good habit to build. We do charge a one-time fee to open your account, but it's typically about $9. And then our payment plans start at about $25 a month. But you can visit our pricing page for more details. You know, you can pick a plan that works best for your budget so you can make those payments on time.
You're paying yourself $25 a month and it gets reported on credit bureaus. And then you might have to a startup fee of $9. And as long as you're not late, then you don't have to worry about any crazy fees. It's great. And that's on the low end. Obviously, you can go much higher if you want, and then establish your down payment. Let's say you know that you have to have $10,000 to be able to cover your down payment and maybe your closing costs. Yeah, that's tough, but right, you can do that. So, and you can have it set up on a period of time that you like. If you want it to be 6 months, if you want it to be 2 years.
Well, we currently have two different options that you can choose from. So we've got a couple payment plans that you can pay on for 12 months. And then we have a couple payment plans that will go to 24 months, so 2 years. So again, check out our pricing page for details since they do update occasionally. But we do try to provide a couple different options that, you know, people can pick which option best fits their goals.
Liberty, you want to read this one?
Yes. So we have a question here pop up. How long is the shopping period for lender shopping? I hear it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's typically about that time. Yes. So, you know, typically get your quotes within that short time period if you can, because then it'll count just as that one hard inquiry on your report. Now, caveat here, another explainer, that's only if you're getting quotes for mortgage products, say, or if you do it for a car loan. You know, if you do one inquiry for a car loan, one for a mortgage, one for a credit card, those do not count as the same shopping period. Those will count as 3 separate things. So I do like to call that out, but for mortgages specifically, yeah, you can get those in. And I always recommend get multiple quotes from different lenders so that you can do your research and find the best rates and options for you.
Love it. I think this is hilarious. John says, our kids try to use that logic with us, with their grades, saying in effect that 75% should be just as good as 90% because we passed. And that's really funny. That's funny.
John.
I love that.
That was good. And then
John says, on a more personal note, we purchased a new build last December 10th, and we have about another 2 months or so to go. Your channel has been a tremendous help and a blessing through these crazy times. Thank you. Well, thank you, John. We love seeing you engage with our channel and our podcast. And congratulations on the new home to come.
Yay. Hopefully
Heck
it'll close.
You're right there at your next credit inquiry too. You're right there. So I just wanted to say the reason why we keep reading these out is because we're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, every podcast app out there. So it's good if people are listening in to hear what the comments are. And then there was a question earlier about Pflugerville Blackhawk. JJ, you want to take that?
Oh, yeah, of course. I don't know where there's any other land at, and there's a bunch of farmers out here. I live across the street from cows, and it is a cool subdivision. I think it has a different level from other Pflugerville neighborhoods. You know, you got the community pools and just super awesome suburbia with your fishing ponds and trails and parks. So
the one thing I want to say is not actually about Blackhawk, but about Coventry. I don't know if you've heard, but about a week ago, Coventry was purchased by Dreamfinder Homes. So I've got new builds from both of those builders. Dreamfinder is a solid builder, but not a top, like a high luxury builder. And Coventry is more of on the luxury end for builders. And so I don't know what's going to happen after the acquisition, if they're just going to keep Coventry around, if the warranties are going to be the same, or what's going to happen. So pay attention to that. That's all I'm going to say. But if you can get a really good deal because of incentives, the reason why they have incentives is because they were just acquired, and that might be of some help later.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ian. That's inspiring as we go into the weekend. And I'll just have one little thing to say about this. You know, credit, it might not be the most fun thing to think about all the time, but with anything, your health, your credit health, your financial health, it takes time and energy and intention. So really focus on that. And thank you so much, Lauren, because this truly is a resource for us all. And I can't wait to get my account going.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Off of that too. Yeah, like I was thinking that too. I think it seems overwhelming. Like, I want to talk to a realtor. I want a good credit score. I'm ready to purchase a house. 10% down payment. Holy schmoles. And, you know, like Liberty said, it takes time. Health, wealth. It's a lifestyle, and a lifestyle's every day. You gotta watch what you're spending. I mean, you're consuming something every day, and that's
and it's about it's about building these habits that can be sustainable over time, right? So to your point, like buying a house, especially if you're in a place right now where you don't have a high income and you don't have great credit, can feel so overwhelming. But if you kind of get your plan in place, you know, get creative, find ways to save money, get the tools, you know, maybe like Self that could help you kind of build your credit. And you break it down and you just take it step by step until one day, you know, when you're in your dream home, it'll all have been worth it. You know, when you look back and, you know, you just take it day by day until you get to that point.
It's so true. So true.
Yeah, I want to share a quick story, and we were talking about this earlier. So I broke my hand, and I was looking at my credit score and all that. So, you know, I believe in using products that I promote and I talk about. And so I've had Self for a while, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it's always good. It doesn't cost any, you know, $10 or whatever. It doesn't cost anything to really have it. So I always keep an eye on my score and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I can get whatever I want right now, right? And then I broke my hand. Well, I have not gone to the doctor for something serious. I've never broken anything. Let me just say it that way. And I went in there and I saw the bill and I was like, I could pay cash, but we're closing on our next house in a couple weeks. And I was like, I don't want to take cash out of my account and have it look all weird. And so I just put it on a credit card. Well, that's a bill. When it went on the credit card this month, October 1st, it hit. And I saw the my credit score drop by like 23 points. I'm like, what just happened? And it's because of that balance. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. So be mindful of that. Anytime you have a balance that's sitting on your credit, that can impact your score tremendously. Yeah, look. There goes the DTI. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then-
that debt
no
to income.
I don't have
ratio.
any debt, and then I have this. This is like the first debt I have. I'm like so frustrating.
That's a good point too. I mean, that emergency fund, like making sure you have extra too in case anybody falls off a skateboard or whatever you did, Ian.
It was
I
my
still
one
don't
wheel.
know.
hilarious.
I still don't know. But
I flew off a
thanks,
cliff on my
everybody.
mountain bike. Anyway, yeah. Thanks
Mountain
everybody.
bike.
Thanks
Thanks for
Lauren.
tuning in.
Have
Have
a
a good
wonderful
weekend.
weekend, and we'll see you guys next Friday.
Yeah.
Bye.